What's up, guys? So we're going to do another video today about more Linux technologies. This one is particularly interesting to me because I'm a huge fan of Ubuntu, and I've recently ran into this problem where I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do with some older hardware that's actually still pretty good. And so I'm trying to find a Linux distro. I'm a huge fan of Ubuntu, but I'm trying to find a Linux distro that has a very refined interface that anybody could really use. So it's kind of got to feel like a Windows system or maybe a Mac OS. I'm going towards Windows because that's more my forte. And so I'm going to try a couple of different ones. Linux Mint is the one we're going to do today. We're just going to install it on how I would use it personally. I do a lot of developer related stuff these days professionally with my work. And so I use developer tools. I like Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to use Git and any of that kind of stuff. And so that's how I'm going to build it out, just like that. But what I wanted to talk about is that this is a good alternative for the OS that you could put on some of your older hardware. I happen to have, say, at least three i7 4790K systems in my house that by the end of this year, October, will no longer be supported on anything Microsoft Windows related. So Windows 10 is end of life in October. Windows 11 is a replacement, obviously. And Windows 11 does not support a 4th gen CPU. In fact, if you look at the CPU supported list, which, where the heck did I put that window? Let me grab that really quick right here. If you look at the CPU supported list for Windows 11, it only supports like 8th gen and newer. And that's the case for i3s, i5s, and i7s. Now, you'll find some weird numbers in here like a 1240p. This is technically a 12th gen, even though the number is only 3 digits. Kind of doesn't follow the standard of like this is the generation and this is the version, but anyhow, these are all 12th gen CPUs. So back to Windows 11 just doesn't support it, and I believe it's because of some security features that are not available in the older chips that are in the new 8th gen and newer Intel CPUs. And so if you have any of these older systems, which by the way they run great in my opinion, especially for kids, 3 of my kids have these i7 4790Ks. And 4090 whatever, the 4th gen i7, and they work great. Like they have a 1080 GTX card in it. They can play Fortnite and play Roblox or whatever they want to do, but it's just not going to support Windows 11 when October comes around, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I don't want to throw it away. The systems perform very well, frankly, and I don't really want to buy a whole bunch of new hardware for everybody because that's $400 or $500 easily for a motherboard, CPU, and RAM for each of those. Plus, then I also got to figure out what I'm doing for licensing Windows 11. And so it gets pretty expensive. Plus, then I'm also got a bunch of hardware that I should do something with instead of just throwing it in the trash. And so my thought would be I could run Linux on some of these, put them out in the garage or the shed or wherever I'm going to put it that I can use it. But at least it's a system that's functional. It's actually going to perform quite well, in my opinion. And I still get some use out of that hardware. So the first one we're going to play with is Mint. After this Linux Mint, I'm going to do a video on Zorin OS because it's also based on Ubuntu, which I happen to really like Ubuntu. And I played with both of them already, and I can tell you I do think the Zorin OS interface is a little bit more similar to Windows, but I'm not 100% convinced that I want to use one over the other. So anyhow, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and just build this out as a VM in Proxmox. So this would be a little bit informational rather for you guys. If you're not familiar with Proxmox, it's a replacement in my house for VMware ESXi because you can no longer, with Broadcom's acquisition of VMware, you can no longer get a free license of ESXi for home anymore. So I tried 2 different ones. I tried XCP-NG as my hypervisor on my hardware, and I don't like it. I think it has some weird quirks and some problems. It's just not as stable as I was hoping, and the import process didn't work as well as I wanted through pulling from VMware. So I moved over to Proxmox, and it's not as refined like the GUI, but to be honest with you, it kind of feels more similar to the ESXi GUI than XCP-NG did. Also, it's been very stable, and the migration process for my ESXi host was very good. So that's why I chose Proxmox. I know this video is not about that. So we're going to go ahead and just create a VM. We're going to do this pretty quick because that's not really what this is about. It isn't about Proxmox. One other thing I want to mention is I'm going to do this as a VM. If you want to do this and install it on your old hardware, it's basically going to be the same process. The only difference is not a VM, so you don't need to follow these Proxmox pieces. What you need to follow is getting the ISO on a USB stick so you can boot from it. And I would use Rufus, R-U-F-U-S, for the tool to put that ISO onto a USB so that you can boot it. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to call this gmint demo. And let's just go next. The ISO I'm going to use is Linux Mint. We're going to say graphics card. I'm going to do Spice. That's just a Proxmox thing. I'm going to give this thing like 50 gigs at disk. Let's see, where do I want to put it? I'll put it on the SSD so it's a little bit faster. I'm going to give it 2 procs and 2 cores each, so total 4 vCPU. Let's give it 8192 RAM. And my VLAN, I'm going to tag it. I use tagging in my implementation of Proxmox so that I can have multiple VLANs that VMs serve, or reside in, rather. I'm not going to do the firewall on here because that means I'm putting a firewall in the Proxmox environment, like at the interface or at the VM, lower than the VM layer, like within the Proxmox system. I'll just rely on a firewall on the VM itself if I want that inside the OS. So no firewall. We're going to go ahead and confirm and start it. So now it should show up here. There it is, it's starting to create. Let's go over to console and look at that. So it's booting the ISO. Start Mint. Go ahead and go right into this. Okay, it's slow. It's slow, like me. There we go. So basically what a lot of these installers do, Zorin as well as Mint, is I believe it's going to boot into like a trial desktop. So the installer is technically like within the Mint operating system. So you could play around with it. I think that's how this one works. I'm pretty sure that's how Zorin worked too. It's been only a day since I installed this and I already forgot. All right, so give it a second here. It'll come up with a GUI. And by the way, on the instructions here on my website, I'm going to have the link to Linux Mint. You can also just search for it. It's pretty easy to do. And then I've got all the steps on what I did, including the No Machine, which I'll show you that instead of a VNC remote to this graphical desktop. I'm going to use No Machine. It's better or easier to set up, frankly, than VNC. And I also tried another one called XRDP, which I thought would be great, but it's just not stable. Like the RDP client just does not run as well as it should. So, and then I got a couple other things like the Starship prompt I really like. I'll show you that. That's actually pretty sweet. All right, so we're in the Linux Mint desktop, and you can see like you can play around. This would be exactly what it looks like when you install it, but it hasn't officially installed. It's just running off of the boot disk. So I'm going to go ahead and run this install Mint here. I think I double-clicked that. Maybe I didn't. Let's try that again. Or it's just very slow. Surprisingly, very slow. We're almost in pause mode here. You probably thought the video froze. The video didn't freeze. My computer clearly is frozen. Give me a second. Okay, we're back. I don't know what happened there. I think it's just because I got a couple of different VMs here that are hogging a bunch of the CPU off of my server. I put it in quotes because it's not really a server. It's a big Dell Precision desktop, and it has a Xeon 5 E5 or something like that, and 128 gigs of RAM. So it runs a lot of stuff. And I've got some actual, what I would call my production servers in there that serve files, firewall. I got some Minecraft. I got Rancher Kubernetes cluster. I got my own Git, and I got a Geekhead is my like jump host or my bastion host, if you will. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and install multimedia codecs, which lets you play certain files. I'm going to imagine it's probably like any of the H.264 kind of encodec or MP3 or whatever, MP4 stuff. I would say yes, go ahead and do it. It makes sense to me. I'm not going to use LVM for the disk. We're just going to erase the whole thing and take that entire volume and break it up or split it up rather, for the Mint OS. So this will take a little bit of time. I'll go ahead and pause it once it's actually installing. Not Denver. There we go, Phoenix. Your name. My name is G. We're going to call this gmint demo. Username. We're going to do a simple password because I'll just destroy this. That's not a fair password. That is a terrible password. You call that fair? Oh my gosh, it's incredibly easy to hack that. Okay, so let's just go ahead and say require. I would suggest, I mean, it just depends on what you want to do with it, but I would make it sign in, like, I don't know. If someone were to get into your desktop, they could just start using it without even knowing any password. I would say, even if everybody in your house knows the password, at least some random doesn't show up in your shed and start playing with your computer because it was wide open. I don't know, just my thoughts. I also think that if you physically can get the computer, you can crack the password. Like that's just that it's easy to do that stuff. And so I guess it doesn't really matter unless you lock up the box. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pause this while it's installing. Oh my goodness, that took a long time. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and restart now, which it's gonna ask me to pull out the. Oh, I guess I should wait. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, remove installation media. So we go to the CD drive and we edit and we say do not use media, and then we go back to console and then I go ahead and push enter, and it should reboot and load up Mint for the first time. Okay, so we are officially booted up. Let me go ahead. Oh, that's right. It's not my normal password. It's a simple password. We're going to go ahead and log in for the first time. And eventually I'm going to break out of this console here. I'm going to use no machine here in a second as soon as we get it installed. And then you can get a little bit better resolution and a little bit better throughput and frame rate, I guess you could say. So it's going to show a welcome to Linux Mint. Welcome to your new operating system. You can either say don't show this and just close it, which I'm going to say don't show, and then we'll go through it a little bit. And it just says, some common things that you might want to set up first. So if you go to like desktop colors, I think it'll let you set a theme. And you can pick like dark or mixed. I kind of torn, frankly. I kind of like the dark and I like the mixed, honestly. We'll pick a slightly different. I got Mint Y, Mint X, and Mint L. Oh, interesting. Kind of like the Mint Y. Yep. All right, and you can set up system snapshot. So this is kind of like the Windows snaps, right? Basically what it does is it sets up some kind of snap so you can roll back in case something breaks. It's not a bad idea to set them up, frankly. Then if you apply some patch or something happens and you got issues, you can roll back your operating system to a specific state, which is kind of cool. On a laptop or a desktop, a physical device like that, it would actually be pretty beneficial. On a Proxmox or a VM in Proxmox, I can actually set a snapshot at the VM level, and then I can revert snapshots if I wanted to do that. That would also work. So I can pick a couple per day, so 5 per day. And then if I also want to include all files for my home folder, I can do that, and so it'll keep that in there for me. And we set that up. So now it should make snaps. We'll just let that go. Driver manager, probably don't need to do anything in there. Update manager, that's fine, and we'll update later. And then firewall, if you want to set some firewall stuff, I would recommend, if you're not on your home network that you run a firewall, you can see the profile here is currently set to home and the firewall is off. So if you did like public or office, it would technically turn the firewall on because I think by default those are on. Now, what I don't know yet is how does it know which profile you're on? Does it like look at your environment and kind of go, oh, this is home versus office? I don't know how it would know that. So you might have to set this yourself manually. So if you're out in the public's not a bad idea. If you never really want to access this system remotely, other than via some tool you've installed, but you never want to leave like ports open or anything, the best is probably just set it to like public or office, because then the firewall's on and nobody can talk to your device. All right, software manager is a whole bunch of software packages you can install in the software manager. It's kind of like the Microsoft Store, if you will, maybe just a little bit simpler in form, but there's a lot of stuff out there that you can download and install that's part of the Linux or Ubuntu, probably part of the Linux Mint thing. I guess it's probably based off of Ubuntu, just a guess. And I don't know what it's doing with generating cache. Yeah, so you can see like there's a bunch of things in here you can install. VirtualBox, if obviously you wouldn't want a VirtualBox inside of a virtual machine, but if it was on physical hardware, you could do this. You could run virtual machines. Spotify app, GIMP, which is an image tool like Photoshop, but not even close to the same feel. Firefox, I think, already comes with it. Krita is another like Photoshop, and actually I like Krita better than GIMP personally. So if you want like a Paint Shop, not Paint Shop Pro, Photoshop type thing, Krita is a good one. FileZilla is excellent if you want to do like FTP related things. Let's see what else. Oh, Ramina is excellent. If you want to do RDP sessions to other devices, Ramina is your best tool. I literally use that daily in my professional environment for RDPing to Windows for my Linux desktop. Blender is just 3D modeling. It's very good. And these are just, I guess, some of the more common software packages. And then you can pick like different categories. All right. Let's go ahead and close this and let's get started with installing some stuff. So the first thing I wanted to do is I do like SSH enabled so that I can SSH to it from my primary computer. So there isn't SSH enabled today. So we're going to want to say, I'm going to switch to root real quick. And then I'm going to say some of these commands down here. So like apt install OpenSSH. Didn't I copy that? Maybe I didn't. Oh, you can't copy paste in this. What an idiot. Apt install OpenSSH server. So we're going to go ahead and say yes to that. And it should install OpenSSH. And then I can SSH and copy paste stuff pretty easily. So we'll do that here in a second. All right, perfect. Oops. So we'll go here and we'll say SSH G at 192.168.15 dot. What is this one? IP address, it is 130. It's just getting the DHCP address, so we'll go ahead and do 130. Go ahead and do that, type in the password, and now we're logged in. So we'll switch to root, and there we are. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is install Google Chrome. I'm going to install it straight from their website, so if you went to this link here, google.com/Chrome, you can get the download links. I'm just going to copy them from my document here and install them. So it's downloading right to my G home folder. Actually, it's probably not the best place to put this actually. Can I just, can't just cancel this? Oh my gosh, I gotta backspace the whole thing. Okay, so the better spot I guess would be if you go to downloads and then we'll paste this in here. It'll download the installer file and then it'll go ahead and run dpackage to install it. And then once it's installed, we should see it up here in the GUI. So now if I click on the start button and we go to internet, it should have Chrome. And actually it's bolded, which might mean that it was recently installed. So now you can see that Chrome is installed. Now we have Google Chrome. I happen to like it more than Firefox, frankly. You can also just do Chromium if you want to. Obviously up to you, but I would prefer Chrome. Another thing I wanted to show is you can right click on these and you can say pin to panel. So then when I close it, it'll stay there. So now I always have that tile ready to go. The next thing I want to do is install Visual Studio. I got these steps straight from this document here, and if we go there, you can see all the steps that I ran. So it's this echo here, adding, I think some, yeah, I'm not really sure what that does. Debconf, set selections. It must add a repo to apt get. No, that's what this is doing for sure. This is adding a key pair, and then it does add the repo here. So I'm not really sure what that is, but that's okay. I don't have to know. I just follow the instructions. All right, and so we're going to go ahead and just literally, I'm going to take that entire, I put it all into a couple lines, and I'm just going to say, copy this like that. And we'll just paste it like that, like crazy. And just have it run through all of those steps. What do you think? All right, so it's installed. So now if we come back here again and we click on this start button and we go to programming, you see Visual Studio Code. So now I've got Visual Studio installed. I'm going to go ahead and right click on this one too and pin it to the panel. And you can sign in and use the Copilot for AI, which I'd highly recommend. I should do a video on AI, and if you're not using AI for literally everything you're doing on your computer, then you're not using computers to the best of their ability, because AI is super helpful in troubleshooting and ideas and just everything. So it works really well in a code platform like that as well, because it'll help you write some code. All right, so the next thing we want to do is Starship. So Starship's an excellent cross-platform CLI, and it is really slick. So it's just starship.rs, and then you've got various platforms. I use it in Windows and Linux. I just copy this command here. I put it in my example code, and then for bash, you just add this at the end of your bash RC. So I've got those commands here. So it's just going to run this. And it asks me if I want to install it, and I say yes. And that's it. And then I'm going to go ahead and run these 3 commands for root. as well as for my G account. Now let's go back to root again. Oh, look at that. Did you see my prompt already changed? So this was my old prompt, pre-Starship. This is my new prompt. Starship is slick. Definitely better than the standard prompt. So I would highly recommend it if you like CLI related stuff. And the next thing we're going to do is install Git, just because Git's really good if you want to do any kind of programming stuff. Git repositories, GitHub or GitLab, definitely the de facto standard for that. And then obviously you need a key. SSH keys for this kind of work. I don't want to run that as root though, so let's go ahead and exit. We are going to run it in my G account. It'll create a private key. Probably sloppy, but I do not use passphrases because every time you use the key, you gotta type a stupid passphrase, so no thanks. All right, and then the last thing I want to do for me is I want no machine on here so that I can go ahead and remote to this. So let's go ahead and go back into downloads. See, just Google Chrome's in there. I'm going to do a wget on this and another D package to install no machine. This is a slick tool. Like, if you ever set up VNC, you understand why I say this is slick, because getting VNC to work is, I mean, it's not super hard, but it's certainly not this easy, right? It's done for the most part. I just install it and it works, and I can connect to it from, I don't need to register anything. I don't have to sign into some portal or expose any ports. If I'm just doing this internal, it literally just works. And so I'll show you that. I'll show you the console here in a second. Pull it on the screen actually right now so you can see I had these and this automatically showed up. So there's a little bit of discovery happening as well, which is pretty slick. You can also just hit add and add a host by the host name. So like if it's NX something, I guess it doesn't show you that on the screen, but I'm pretty sure it's like, well, here I guess you just type the IP address. If you know the IP, you would just type in there. If the network discovery doesn't work, like maybe it's cross security domains, like two different VLANs separated by a firewall or something, then you'd have to type in the IP. But in this case, it's discoverable because it's in the same IP range that this VM is. And so now I've got a remote control that I can literally see the same thing that's on this console using no machine. You see the other two disappeared because I powered them off. So if you look at Proxmox, I turned off Gmint and Zorin, so they don't exist at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this guy, and it's going to say, do you trust it? And say yes. I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my user, same user that I signed in with. We'll go ahead and save that. Always log in using this method. That's fine. I don't care. You don't have to show me that. Scale remote to fit the window. Yeah, that sounds good. Resize remote to match the client window. Yes. Okay. So, wow, look at that. Nice resolution, right? And it just stole, if you will, the session I had over here. So it's whatever active session is going. So now I've got a connection into, a GUI connection into this platform. Now I kind of think I chose the wrong options on display. I think it's resize. Viewport? No. Yeah, I think it's resize. So now it's proportionate. Okay, that's a little better. All right. So that's basically the point that I like to get my system. Now I can actually do some coding. I guess I could show you some Python installs and stuff at some point, but right now we're just going to leave it at this. So I've essentially got a Linux Mint install. It's running on my network because the drivers are all there, which by the way, I installed this on an older Dell Precision M48 laptop. And the drivers were there. It was excellent. It had NVIDIA drivers for the 4K screen that's on that thing. And it runs pretty good for older hardware. And you can use it for all kinds of things. Unless you're playing video games, chances are the Linux Mint or Zorin OS that I'm going to show in a future video, chances are either one of those will do just fine for what you need to do. So if you're just browsing the web, or you're doing some small little graphic editing, or maybe you're doing some coding. If you're doing coding, I would certainly suggest just doing it in a Linux box. It'd be pretty easy. I do a lot of it all day long, Terraform and Python and stuff, and I do it all in Linux. So it's an excellent option for older hardware that can't run Windows 11. So I hope this video was useful for you. Leave a comments, and if you have any questions or you want to do something, have me do a video that's slightly different on a different Linux technology, just let me know and I'll try to help out. Thanks, guys.